Hey everybody, this is Eve West. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. This channel is ultimately dedicated to promoting a book I wrote. It's called Follow. It's an ebook. You can find it on Amazon.com under the Kindles tab. And my book deals with a holistic view of spirituality and looking at it not just from a purely psychological or metaphysical standpoint, but also a physical, which correlates to the reptilian brain. Typically, when we think of spirituality, we think of it in terms of, love and, intuition, creativity, those intangible, etheric aspects of who we are, but we also have a very physical side. And so I look at very controversial topics such as sex, race. I look at, sex, race, religion, those topics that, we're typically told to kind of stay away from sex. We're told to stay away from those various things and talking about them, but they're very integral to, who we are as a physical being. And so I look at the various constructs of the matrix, such as media, entertainment, religion, education, the government structure, the familial structure, and how these structures are set up within the matrix to create a split mind, to disintegrate the mind between what people call Adam and Eve, or the conscious or unconscious mind, Isis and Ra, the astral and the ego, whatever it is. There's so many different names for it in various religions and secular circles, so to speak. But this is designed to create a separate you. So there's two aspects of you. You have an astral self, or what you would call an unconscious part of yourself that you don't recognize or you don't know. And then you have a conscious ego, which is an aspect of yourself that you do know, but you're aware of. And so it so happens that, both aspects of you are actually fabricants. They're fabrications. They have nothing to do with the real you, which is the Christ. And I wouldn't even say that, as my consciousness kind of evolves, I wouldn't even say the Christ is the real you per se, because Christ just represents the merging of the conscious and the unconscious. But the unconscious and the conscious mind are two fabrications. If you weren't under a restriction as an ego, then there would be no unconscious aspect of you, really. So you think to yourself, well, if this works in cause and effect in a way, and I'm not saying that karma is real per se within the physical reality, but, you, because of your restrictions within as an ego, you have the unconscious. So, if it were not one for the other, then you wouldn't have the other, if that makes sense. So it's a fabrication. It's not really who you are. You are supposed to be the witness, the one who witnesses the ego and the unconscious, or the masculine, the feminine aspects of the soul. And so, my book really just talks about that, talks about the elite who created this hellhole for the Jews, and, how they plateaued out of experiencing the material. And so because of that, they are very evil, disgusting, and degenerate beings who, believe in just torturing us and sacrificing us, because they really have nowhere to go. They've shopped till they dropped, they've eaten, everywhere. They've indulged in the material. They've shopped and traveled and, had sex, done the Karma Sutra 33 times, 1,000 times over. And so, in order to receive an emotional charge, they get an emotional charge by making people suffer and feel bad. So they're very sick and disgusting and degenerate, and, they don't need a gavel, but they really need a mirror. They really need to look at themselves. But they don't want to do that because they want to play God, I should say. The name of this video, just kind of getting into the video now that I've gotten Follow out the way. And if you are interested in purchasing my ebook, there's a link in the description of this video. But, in terms of this video, it's really mainly to focus on the coffin of the Zodiac. The coffins of the Zodiac. Because since I've been getting a whole lot of opposition lately, it really has, caused me to try to go within, to say, okay, what is it that's causing a lot of these issues and obstacles and things like that, because they're not natural and they're not karmic too. The thing is that anything at the atomic level is not karma. The thing is that the bafflement magicians of our reality set it up and trick us to believe that it's karma when it's not. You know, everything is predetermined or programmed from what we call the astral realm, and so really the ego is just acting out everything that was programmed by the sadistic people that made this reality. So, but when you start to wake up and your pineal gland opens, you start to see what you would call glitches in the matrix. And in seeing these glitches, you see that, that karma doesn't necessarily exist. Like there couldn't, like there's so many so-called coincidences that occur that you say to yourself, this stuff has to be planned. You know what I mean? And so really a lot of things start to malfunction, the set, so to speak. Going back to Egyptian mythology with the Egyptian god Set, who mutilated his brother Osiris. The set starts to become, I guess what you would call exposed. Yeah, exposed. So I wanted to focus on the coffins of the Zodiac, because the coffins of the Zodiac are really one of the first indications that we are born into a system that is not karmic, but it's not cause and effect, that is set for us, that it's something, it's a coffin, it's a cookie cutter system, it's a matrix that has a binary code. Like going back to the movie The Matrix and how, they were able to decode the matrix. It's like I guess what you would say, mathematical precision. When Neo goes to see the architect at the end of the Matrix trilogy, the architect tells him that the Matrix was created based upon mathematical precision. And so whenever you get into things like synchronicities in the New Age, things start to happen, if you will, you really start to see that there's, that there is no separation between you and other people. And so this is what we call death or ego death, because your ego, the ego is the false you, right? The unconscious aspect is the false you too, but the ego is the false you. And so since the ego is the false you, you have your own personality, your own social security card number, your own, career, family, your own stuff. So this is like a false you. But you are super connected to everyone, and you are, in a way, that energy that everyone else is. Some people call it source in the New Age. And so, I started to experience very weird things when I started to experience, as I acquired ego death, such as, just synchronicities. Like if I had a thought and I was like, oh, I really hate cats. And then I would have people come up to me and say, you know what, I really hate cats. I'm like, what the is that? You know what I mean? I just had that thought. And so, you would think to yourself, oh, that's just a coincidence. You know what I mean? Someone thought the same thought that you were thinking at the same time. However, when that happens to you, like several times during the day, several times during the week, it goes beyond what we would call coincidental, and it becomes a synchronicity. It becomes a glitch in the matrix. It becomes you are connected to all that is, kind of thing. And so that's why many people, when it comes to the coffins of the Zodiac, they identify with their Zodiac sign. Many people who read their horoscope, although you can't really, horoscopes are off. You can't really get an accurate, I would say, Zodiac reading without, doing your natal chart. Excuse me. But because your natal chart, it actually goes into more detail about the time of your birth and so forth, and where you were born and yada yada yada. But your natal chart, corresponds a lot to who you are as a personality, because this is a false personality. And so that's why many people are like, oh, that's me, I have that attribute or whatever. That's because this is a coffin. You are playing a part. This is a play of existence. That's why the Bible, right, is written in scripture. It's a script. And so this corresponds to also what people call the Akashic record, or the book of life mentioned in the book of Revelation in the Bible. And so the Akashic record outlines all of the thoughts, actions, and emotions, or the Merkaba, the physical, mental, and emotional aspect of a being from birth to death. And so your whole purpose is to awaken, if you will, out of the slumber of this, what you call Zodiac coffin. And so, there's so many indications, like MK Ultra, monarch program slaves are often, shown films. Like for me, I was shown The Wizard of Oz. In The Wizard of Oz, it's about the Zodiac. It's about the Zodiac. It's about when the theme song of that movie is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And so, when Judy Garland or Dorothy is singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, she's really talking about somewhere over escaping the wheel of rebirth, the wheel of the Zodiac. Okay? And so, getting off the wheel of the Zodiac is escaping what you call reincarnation. And so, even going back to in the movie The Wizard of Oz, when the houses are dropped on the witches or whatever, Dorothy's so-called predecessors, these are the houses of the Zodiac. If you do a natal chart, it's set up into 12 different houses. And so these houses, represent, really in a way, they represent inheritances. If you will, every lifetime you get, I guess what you would call fiat notes or money. If you will, when your Saturn returns, they call it a Saturn return. But when Saturn returns, which is the planet of the material, which is your pineal gland, so Saturn is connected to your pineal gland. But when the material is returned to you, all those things that you were deprived of as a slave, as an ego, and you actually go to heaven, and you ascend to the astral realm, which is what I call heaven. You get back all of the stuff that that you unconsciously accumulated throughout your incarnation. It's tailored to those houses. So all of the I would say, going back to the Wizard of Oz, all the witches that had houses dropped on them, this corresponds to the houses of the Zodiac, because the witches represent the unconscious mind. So, your unconscious is everything that you want. And I've talked about this in many various videos, but basically, this whole world is designed to create a wishful mind, phantoms. I want to do this, I want to do that. Every time we look at television, we're faced with what we call the 7 deadly sins. It's like lust. You're faced with a whole bunch of sex infused into everything, but you're told that you shouldn't indulge in sex, or you're faced with a whole lot of food and stuff like that, and abundance and smorgasbord of food, but you're told you should be you should practice temperance and not overindulge in food. You see a whole bunch of violence and so forth, but you're told you shouldn't be violent. So people tend to think that these things are natural, but they're not. It creates what we call a wishful mind. So the restriction of the law causes you to wish and want something, and your unconscious mind gets what you want. So when you go to sleep at night and you shed your concepts of the matrix, because you're not really anything when you go to sleep, and you go to the astral realm at night, you're not a man, woman, rich, poor, black, white, whatever, you're no one, but you have access to all the things that you wanted on the astral realm. So you are a slave, if you will, for the astral body, which is this this part of you that of what you want to do, what you want. The only way to go over the rainbow or escape the wheel of rebirth, or the Zodiac, the wheel of the Zodiac, is to bring heaven and earth together, to actually merge the conscious with the unconscious together in physicality. Because if you leave your body and you go to heaven, or die, if you die and go to heaven, you will be back in hell. Because you're going from one extreme to the next. You're going from the moon to the sun. Moon, sun, heaven, hell at this point. Because it's like you can't ground anything in this reality. You know what I mean? There's so many things that you want to do. Like, for example, I'm going to share with you in this video, things that I've wanted to do and I've worked towards, but I've been prevented from doing from the unconscious mind. And so the unconscious, I guess, is what you would consider to be God in layman's terms. The unconscious mind is, the aspect of you that's using you. It's using you. It's like a slave master, if you will. So in your unconscious, let's say the astral aspect of you that lives on the astral realm wants a Range Rover. So it will purposely create a scenario in your physical where you cannot achieve that car. So maybe you don't have the credentials to get a job, to make money to make it, or you don't have the time to make the money to get that car. And so it will actually put that, set up scenarios. Your unconscious, the one that uses you as a slave, as a slave, which is your master, will perpetuate and desire that car through your ego so it can have it when you go to sleep at night. And so it doesn't really want to acknowledge this. The unconscious mind is very, people tend to think that God or the unconscious is a good thing, but the unconscious is actually not a good thing according to my assessment and how I judge it. The unconscious is my unconscious in particular is very evil and fearful and just deceptive and conniving and disgusting and hypocritical, actually. And so this kind of goes back to the Garden of Eden, because the book of Genesis, and please look at my Genesis video, if you will, because I break down the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis. I break it down in layman's terms so people can understand a lot of the esoteric Freemasonry symbologies in Genesis. But the God of the book of Genesis represents the unconscious mind. He's keeping Adam and Eve ignorant in the garden as slaves. It says in the book of Genesis that Adam was created to till the ground. Okay, till the ground is a slave. And so one thing about the unconscious does not want you to know what it's up to. It does not want you to know that you work for it as a slave. It is, really just intended just to kind of keep you dumbed down so you can continue to work for it forever. And so, it's very, the unconscious or God, if you will, when you think of it in those terms. Because there are many different, I would say, definitions of God. I have my own multiple definitions, but when I talk about God in this particular video, unless I mention otherwise, it is the unconscious mind that's actually deceiving you. It is a deceptive mind because, nothing that's truly a God will deceive you. I mean, anything that's truly a God is light, is pure light, to be honest with you. And so when something is trying to keep something hidden and keep something away from you, it is really a devil, a demon, or I would call Satan, really, because, Saturn is connected to the pineal gland. So the pineal gland gives you clarity, but Satan is when that pineal gland, which is connected to the planet of Saturn, that energy chakra system of Saturn, where that energy system is not turning. When you see the word Saturn, you see turn. And so, Saturn is Satan because this doesn't turn anymore. And this kind of correlates a little bit to the celestial planet of Saturn as well, because when you look at different like documentaries and things like that, it says that the celestial body of Saturn has an axis at the top at the North Pole, and so it stays fixed. It does not turn, if you will. And so you ask yourself, well, why is that? That's because the unconscious mind is preventing it from turning properly, which is God, okay, in Genesis. So it wants it to just stay bottlenecked there. It doesn't want to have you actually get to the top of your, or the apex, if you will, of your existence. And the unconscious wants you to stay a slave for it and keep coming back into the reincarnation slave system. Okay? And so going back to that celestial body, that's why the the North Pole, just kind of stays fixed there. And so whenever something's not turning, Saturn becomes Satan, no turn, just Satan. And so this is, correlates to a lot of different things. Like my pineal gland opened up, it correlated even to Christmas, Santa, even our religions that we, and our holidays that we, observe, are satanic. Santa is Satan, spelled, spelled differently. And how, the lights on the Christmas tree, correlate to the Zodiac. And or what I would call your birthstones and so forth, the ultraviolet lights, the rays, if you will, of the sun, they correspond to the to your birthstones. And so your birthstones just represent coffins. So the Zodiac is a coffin. And some people who are religious too will say, oh, well, that Zodiac stuff, that's not of God or what have you. But your Bible is riddled with astrology. Even like Jesus, they say they saw Jesus' star, the 3 wise men, right? They're wise, so they're using astrology, they're using the stars to actually find Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, the one to destroy the slave reincarnation system of the Zodiac, basically. Where the government is seeking after this child because this child is supposed to be the one to actually destroy it. And so your Bible has a lot of astrology in it. So religious people, they just, go to church and they listen to a preacher that tells them, turn to this Bible verse or whatever the case, and, read that or what have you. But, the Freemasons that created the Bible and all these monotheistic religions, they know that you have not the time or even the effort, especially if you have a family, you have to work, and you have to go to school. They throw you into a life of toil, so you really don't find out the truth. But if you actually read the Bible and you do your research, you'll really come to find out that astrology is very much a part of the Bible, and astrology is very much a part of our existence. And it aids in this this matrix prison system. And so my higher self, or what I would call my unconscious evil, disgusting, degenerate self that governs my ego, felt that this was the time, to let me know about these I guess you would call the astrological aspect of life, the Zodiac, and how that influences me. When you get closer to giving up your mind and body, your unconscious will throw everything at you but the kitchen sink. And I suppose it does this to feel like it feels justified in judgment, if you will, because the closer you get to the end of your incarnation, the closer you get to judgment. And so the thing is that anything of God is not a true God, not the fake God in the book of Genesis, but a true God is not a God of judgment, because this is illusions. Who would judge illusions? You know what I mean? I kind of use the example of, say, the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Angelina Jolie. So let's, use Angelina Jolie. Like, she's an angel, right? Because there's an angel in Angelina. And so God, who's the unconscious that governs Angelina's ego, is the director of the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And so he has Angelina thinking that she is Mrs. Smith, actually Mrs. Smith. And she plays her part really well, and she reads her lines not knowing that they're lines and they've been programmed into her. And so at the end of the movie, she's judged, and she's judged for killing people, and not only the bad things but the good things, killing terrorists to save the world and so forth. And because there are angels and demons that will be brought upon you at judgment. And so, the director may say to her, why'd you try to kill your husband? Why try to kill your husband? And so, someone who is not conscious will say, well, I tried to kill my husband because he did this, that, and the other to me. because he tried to kill me. I think in the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I think Brad Pitt tries to kill her because he had a job. And so, you know, this is how it kind of gets, you know, how the movie plays out. The karmic aspect of the movie plays out. But someone who's conscious, you know, if Angelina was conscious of what the director, which is the unconscious mind that governs her conscious ego, the character that she plays, she would say, oh, well, you did all that shit. You were the one who wrote the movie. You wrote the movie. You directed it. Because of that, that's the reason why I killed him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have. Because you are governing this ego that I played, this character. And, you know, and if Angelina were conscious, she would say, I'm not Mrs. Smith. You know, really, if anybody is Mrs. Smith, it's you. But you created this false, you know, actress, I should say, and it corresponds to the Akashic record or the wheel of the Zodiac. But the unconscious does not want you to escape the wheel of the Zodiac, so it will put karmic, I would say, it'll put certain things in your way, and this goes into the universe. It'll put things in your way to really you know, try to make your whole life seem to be cause and effect, and the reason why you have to go back. So for example, people who what is it, you know, people who, you know, face judgment, if you will, at the end of their incarnation, they what you call it, they you know, they're presented, you know, with judgment by what they call the lords of karma. And you can see this from the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Tibetan Book of the Dead and so forth. And within these books, if you will, it tells you that, you know, you will be like brought before a panel. So, you know, people like if Angelina Jolie was brought before a panel for playing Mr. and Mrs. Smith in the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith and asked all these questions, you know, and she felt really truly guilty for things that happened within a movie or an illusion, right? Her Zodiac, you know, avatar. They would really know that she's stupid. You know what I mean? They'd be like, okay, she's dumb. You know, she doesn't know that this is an illusion, so, you know, they're telling her, oh, you need to go back, or whatever the case is. But, you know, no being of light actually does that. No being of light tells you to go back for something that's not true and that they themselves have orchestrated and created. So they're tricks. Tricks are for kids, you know, and so if you have to give up your mind and body, whatever the case is, you know, and someone is trying to blame you for things that happen within an illusion, that's really what you should tell them. Tricks are for kids. I'm not a kid, you know, I'm not a little kid. I'm grown up. And so being grown up, you know, you trying to blame me for something that's not true is sick and disgusting, and you're disgusting and you disgust me. So what I really want to talk about when it comes to the coffins of the Zodiac is something that I found within my particular natal chart, and it's called a stellium. Some people pronounce it stellium. But I was watching this girl's video. She was like, you know, it's actually a Latin word. It's called stellium, not stellium. Her name is Stormy, by the way, and I really loved her personality and looking at her video. So shout out to Stormy. If you're really interested in learning about astrology and so forth in your natal chart, but stellium is when you actually have multiple planets within a particular house, and so it's very rare. And so I always talk about in my videos how I've been reincarnated a whole lot, and so I think this happens when you get reincarnated so many times. But you have like a whole lot of planets within one particular house. There's 12 houses, and so in this particular house, I can't remember all of them, but I have, you know, the moon is one of them that's in the 8th house, and I have other planets right there that's within the 8th house. And so the 8th house is a house about what is it? It's a house that deals with death. It's a house that deals with money. It's a house that deals with sexuality and so forth, and very taboo sexuality. Excuse me, guys. But the thing is that, you know, this is the house that I have the stellium in. And so I think out of all the houses of the zodiac, this is the most intriguing house. In fact, this is a house also about secrets and the occult. And so that's why I have so much occult knowledge that's been actually downloaded from my DNA, because a lot of things I talk about in this channel is not things I've researched. It's things where I have based on my research. So really, you know, I would be considered to be a psychic or what have you. And so a psychic is not really what you think of in terms of traditionally what we've been told what a psychic is, right? Like, I mean, think to yourself, if, you know, a psychic was really someone that knew everything, right? Then we wouldn't have psychics taking money from people. You know, it's like if you were psychic, you would know the lottery, you know, traditionally from what we've been told. You would, you know all the lottery numbers. You would be able to, you know, just do things, if you will, that, you know, that don't require you to take money from people. You know what I mean? You know, you would be able to have a sense of knowing that puts you ahead of the game. However, you know, psychics have to take money from people, you know, and so as a result, people are not, who are psychic are not like these all-knowing gods or whatever. The pineal gland works very differently. The pineal gland gives you information like a fortune cookie. So what the pineal gland does is all the information that you've learned throughout your incarnation, it assembles it like little puzzle pieces, and then it puts it all together into a revelation, and that revelation is revealed to you. And so, you know, if your pineal gland is not focused upon something or doesn't feel a need for revelation for something, then you will not be able to recall it. If that makes sense. I hope that the way I explain that really makes sense to people, you know. It's not something that's going to come. Your pineal gland is not going to produce revelations just because at random, you know. And so, you know, having your pineal gland open is you know, it's not something. It can be a blessing, and it also can be a curse. For me, it's been a curse because I'm not an adept at using the pineal gland or the third eye. My unconscious is. And going back to the movie, what is it? The movie, The Wizard of Oz, when the witch tells Dorothy, you know, give me back my shoes. You know, she was like, I'm the only one that knows how to use them. Your unconscious is all knowing. However, Dorothy doesn't know how to use those shoes. And so when you become an adept, you know how to use the pineal gland to do whatever you want to do and to know whatever you want. Whatever you want to know in the physical. But, you know, I guess that kind of contradicts a little bit what I said. But, you know, basically, you know, when you become an adept at using the pineal gland, you're just in more control. You can turn it on, and switch it off at will. And you know, when you see a certain situation arise, if you will, you can go ahead to get revelation to focus. I guess what it is that when you become an adept at using the pineal gland, you can focus it on what you want to focus it on and what you want to know. But within a generation, you know, there's only one being that can do that, so to speak. So there's not multiple beings. There's only one being that's, I guess what you would call Christed, that's truly Christed, or what I would call, like, in the movie Divergent, a 100% Divergent. I think in the second or third movie, the girl who was playing the Divergent, she was 100%, and so she would be a Christ, where she's playing, I guess what you call Sagittarius in a way, the 12th sign of the Zodiac. So she was dauntless, and she was abnegation. Those are two polarized opposites. Dauntless and abnegation are opposites. And so this is the 100% Divergent. That's why you see the Zodiac, or the avatar of Sagittarius, being half person or human and half animal. Okay. This is the true 100% divergent. All other beings, if you will, are variations of that. They represent variations of the Christ, of the divergent. And so, when you reach that 100%, then you are able to use the pineal gland as an adept and at will, as opposed to, being kind of swayed by it, if you will. Like someone who's tripping off of DMT or LSD, because it's very similar. So, I have a stellium in my 8th house. And so in looking at that, I really have come to discover a lot of the reasons why I'm having so much opposition. Because stellium is a very, it's having stellium, which is multiple planets in one house, which is the 8th for me, is a surge of energy. It's a surge of energy that wants to find expression through the physical ego. And so it's energy that becomes banked. I guess you would say every incarnation, it doesn't find realization, it becomes banked. And it stays, I don't know what you would say, dormant. It stays dormant within the being. And so the thing about it is that, going back to sex especially, because sex is something that correlates to the, what is it called? The solar plexus. Solar plexus is Jesus in Christian theology. I know we were taught Jesus, died on a cross or whatever, and he was a man. His name was Jesus, but then now it's Yeshua, and, so many omissions of the truth and just downright lies. But from the occult standpoint, Jesus represents the soul, or the solar plexus, which is the sun, right? Solar, sun, Son of God. So the solar plexus is the Son of God, which is allegorically depicted as Jesus. So the thing is that your solar plexus is located, that energy chakra system is located where your genitals are housed, right? So whenever you are not, when that energy system is not, functioning properly, it degenerates into sexual disgust and perversion. So people within the 8th house, like me, they have, I guess that you would say, sexual perversion because the solar plexus is not functioning well. So, like, for example, when I was a child, I was sexually abused, and I can only remember it back around the age of 4-ish around. But, based upon, what I've heard from a certain family member, I actually have been abused since being a baby in the cradle. I was being sexually abused from being a baby. And so whenever you are debasing the solar plexus and you are, destroying that energy system where the genitals are housed, it creates sexual perversion. Now, for me, that sexual perversion, is unconscious. I'm not aware of it. I would not consider myself to be a sexual pervert. Not saying that I would judge myself if I were, because everything in this reality is illusion, Maya, or dream. It's not what we've been made to be, as opposed to who we are truly. I know it's blasphemy. It's like, I know it's the construct. I mean, if you look at the Roman Catholic Church, many of the priests are molesting boys, but I don't blame the people who are molesting or the priests. I blame the construct, because if those priests were able to make sound decisions about their sexuality and not have to abstain and to embrace the earthly animal, so-called animal nature themselves, it would find expression. It would not materialize and manifest into perversion and disgust. So it's the construct that I blame. So even going back to this, even if I were a sexual pervert or whatever, and the kundalini, the solar plexus rose, I guess that you would say, in a imbalanced way, and I got face to face with the sexually perverted aspect of me that's been dormant or suppressed, if you will, I still wouldn't identify with it. I don't identify with it, but, as an ego, I'm not a sexual pervert. I'm more prudish. I wouldn't say the most prude, but I'm more prudish, and I'm more, I guess that you would say, I don't know, just like, I was always taught to not throw myself around, and, I had my daughter in wedlock. I don't know. I always believed in really trying to get to know someone first, before, engaging in any type of sex with them. I always saw it as a sacred act as opposed to something that was casual and carefree and fun. And so sex really, if you think about it, is supposed to be playful, childlike, carefree and fun, but that's not how, I was oppressed when it comes to sexuality and so forth. And so that's created what I would call, within the unconscious mind, a sexual pervert. Someone who's severely sexually, I would say, suppressed. And so people usually within the 8th house, they're known to be sexual exhibitionists, so to speak. Into certain fetishes and things like that, like S&M, and it could produce a lot of different, what you would call, different, I guess you would say sexualities, like bisexuality and homosexuality or whatever, bestiality, and so forth. And the reason why I know this is, because I've gotten revelation from my pineal gland, is every time you're reincarnated, you become more psychological or spiritual. This goes to the neocortex. So the neocortex is like the newest aspect of the evolution of a human being. The neocortex corresponds to thinking, the thinking mind. So our thinking mind has become so crazy that we think of, sex is not a state of being anymore. It's not about, the body. Like Sadhguru, one of the spiritual teachers I followed during my awakening, he said that, sex is for the body. Once you put it into the mind, you perverted it. And really you have. When I was doing my research for my book, and I was like, okay, why would people be interested in certain sexual fetishes, like peeing on people? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, that's nasty. I wouldn't want to do that. And so, in the article this guy talked about how, that he didn't like the smell of urine, so he would have his partner drink water, and he would drink water ahead of time so the urine could smell better. That's psychological. That's psycho. That's not something that's happening organically. That's something that you really have to think about. And so the more and more you get reincarnated and you come back into the prison system, the more you develop the neocortex. And so the neocortex is the psychological mind, and so something that's natural becomes perverted. So you would say that, from an unconscious standpoint, my unconscious mind is very perverted. And these are things that are hidden from my awareness. So it's hidden from me, from God, or what you would call the unconscious mind, doesn't want me to see them, doesn't want me to look at them, because it judges it as being very bad. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I like doing this, I like doing that, I like partaking in this and partaking in that. It doesn't see it as something that's just what it is. You know what I mean? This whole reality is based upon illusion. So I don't really, look down upon people who have certain even like, dogs or whatever. I love puppies. I wouldn't want to fuck them, but this unconscious aspect of me, if it likes doing that, I'm like, okay, this is an illusion. This is a playhouse, so to speak. You should be able to embrace aspects of yourself without feeling guilty for them. When did this reality become serious and real? And why is it that the people who govern this reality want egos to believe that it's real and want you to buy into, I would say, this construct, and buy into it, and to not be aware of what it is. You should be aware of what you're dealing with when you descend into earth reality, or at this point, hell. So, going to the eighth house, and how it's a house about money as well, about the occult, other people's money. Um, it's I think the eighth house is about other people's money. Maybe it's the seventh house, but because I have a stellium, in a way, I have a stellium in my seventh house, a less severe stellium. It has 3 planets instead of 4, but actually, no, this one has 4 too. So I have 4 planets in the 8th and 4 planets in the 7th. So I have 2 stelliums. So I'm really in for a ride, if you will, as I make my journey or whatever to heaven. It's just very interesting because, I had a very, very difficult childhood where, my dad was a severe alcoholic. And like I said, I experienced sexual abuse. And then, my mother and I had a very tumultuous, just a really poor relationship with one another. And so when I got out of the house and I went to college, I wanted to start my own family. And I wanted to, just embark on a journey of where I could kind of, make better all the things that I endured as a child. And that blew up in my face. And so, I got married, and my ex-husband always cheated on me. And, in terms of my career started to falter. And I got a lot of different bad breaks. I got into debt and so forth. And, it's just very interesting how the higher self, or God, this demonic unconscious aspect of myself, actually betrayed me. I feel betrayed. It's like Judas betrays Jesus, because I would be Jesus, the Son of God, right? How Jesus betrayed me. Not Jesus, Judas. Judas betrayed me. And how, how it really set things up. Because the Matrix is very much a binary code. The Matrix is a false construct. It's not something that's real. It's artificial. And so why would you create something that artificial that fucks someone up? Like, for example, debt. Because the 8th house goes into debt. And so I've been, definitely experiencing a lot of issues when it comes to money. And so I was purposely put into debt, within the Matrix environment. I remember when I was in college, at USC, and, college students, we don't have jobs. You know what I mean? I don't think I had a job during this time, but I eventually did get a job as an RA, but, we really don't have real jobs that, can pay for credit cards and bills and things like that, and all these different things. And so, when I would go to check my mail, for example, at this place or whatever that was designated on campus for us to, to go to do things like eat, check our mail, use, go to the bookstore, whatever it is. They had booths set up where you could sign up for credit cards. And so, in hindsight, I was like, wow, I got into a lot of debt. I made a choice. I made a conscious choice to get into debt. But really, it wasn't a conscious choice. The higher self actually designed me to get into debt right in college. Because, in college, I don't think I had a cell phone at that time. And so they would give phone cards. And, you would be homesick, a little bit. You want to talk to your family. And so you would call home. You would want to call home, but you wouldn't have a way of doing that. And so you would get phone cards if you signed up for this credit card, or you would get, what is it? You would get, if you signed up for credit cards, you'd get little trinkets like t-shirts and things like that. And so, and especially since you don't really have very much money in college, you would take out these credit cards and you didn't have a job to pay for them. But all that stuff is actually, when you look at the Matrix and the binary code, and how, you are actually, the ego is governed by the higher self, or the unconscious mind, that was purposely done for me to get into debt. And so, the thing is that, although this was predetermined, the consequences were also predetermined. And so, the thing I'm trying to reconcile within my mind is, why would something that you deliberately did, in terms of unconscious, what you deliberately did to me, why would you blame me for something that you've done? You know what I mean? It's very, very odd, and disgusting, and really deceptive and conniving and just downright wrong. I don't really think of things in terms of wrong and right per se at the atomic level, but looking into the metaphysics of the atomic, when you're deliberately doing something to fuck yourself over and fuck over like the ego that you govern, you're the master, you're God. To me, that's disgusting. That's disgusting. That my higher self designated for me to have such a poor, be, descend into such a poor familial structure that would lead me to having a marriage with someone who does not honor and respect me. Really. And, and experience that, and experience divorce. That is really, really crazy. So, and looking at the stellium, because of the reincarnation, how much I've been reincarnated, it shows how these energies or whatever, which is this very sexual energy, how it's it's really trying to work through me and really trying to create these horrible scenarios within my life, because it's like an energy that is trying to break through and trying to destroy this ego for some reason. It's funny because you can program the mind for good or evil, so I don't really know why there's such a push to realize something. I feel like, since you are God, right, and you have dominion over this ego, why not provide it with balance as opposed to providing it with imbalance to, experience a stellium, in this case with me in the 8th house, that creates all types of horror within the incarnation: sexual abuse, debt, divorce, and so forth. It doesn't really make any sense. And going back to money, because sex and money is a big part of the 8th house, and my stellium, before, when you look at the educational system, because I talk about in my book Follow how the educational system is also a part of the matrix construct that's designed to disintegrate the mind and to cause what's the word? A divide between Adam and Eve, or the right and the left brain. Like, what do I mean? Like, for example, being in debt, and so I got into a whole lot of debt early on in life, and so, like I said, I was given trinkets and things like that to open up, credit cards when I was in college. But, in terms of the educational system taught me about miscellaneous, irrelevant knowledge, like the slope-intercept and plotting coordinates and how to do proofs and things like that. But, these different, to I guess you would say, integrate these thinking modalities into my mind. But, when it comes to things that I needed to know how to exist in the world, like, learning about credit, like interest, and learning about how to balance a checkbook, and, learning about things that are very much needed necessities within the world, real estate and all these different things that are necessary, if you will, in terms of how to grow your money and bonds and stocks and, flipping houses and things like that. Those things were decided upon by my higher self, which is a filthy, disgusting degenerate. Really was decided to be kept and held from my awareness so I could be a slave to money. You see what I'm saying? And so the thing about it is that, at the end of your incarnation, when you are judged, you are able to, sit and talk with your unconscious. And so I'm really curious to know what my unconscious will say about judging me for being in debt, because, I've been judged about, you can't afford this and do that. But when you reach a higher taxonomy of knowledge to find out why and how that came to be, then the unconscious gets very upset, gets very angry. How can you get very angry when this is something that you yourself predetermined? When you talk to God, so to speak. This is it's very sad. I'm laughing on the outside, but it's very disgusting on the inside to really see that my God actually is judging me for things that it itself actually predetermined. Because like I said, the Zodiac is a predetermined cookie cutter coffin. Stelliums are coffins. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to figure out, it's like for example, when my pineal gland opened and my unconscious was revealed, even down to the name of the church that I attended, the title of it corresponds to how all of my pineal gland would be taken to just leave me as a 5-finger, 5-star, animal, which you can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear, but no pineal capacity. So that was the intention of my higher self, or God, whatever. However, my unconscious always berated me for being gay. And so when I talk about gay, I'm not talking about in terms of I would say like the atomic level, like a man with a man or a woman with a woman, but gay meaning like just a one-sided homo sapien. A homo sapien is you either playing the black or the white part of the checkerboard floor. You're not embracing both. When it comes to Freemasonry, you're not embracing your conscious and your unconscious, or the angel and the demon. You pick one. You're either the angel or you're either the demon. So this is what we consider to be spiritually gay, because you're siding with one or the other. Okay. And so if you're just playing the pineal capacity or just the pituitary capacity, that's gay. So how can you blame someone for being gay when you yourself actually, you had that intention for this soul in this incarnation? To me, that's disgusting. You know what I mean? For you to actually do something so evil as to put a person against themselves and then blame them for what you yourself orchestrated. So, and oftentimes too, in going through these scenarios and looking into the, into the unconscious with the pineal gland to kind of see what's going on in there, I would always try to make justifications for the unconscious, because I was always taught to love God. I wasn't taught that God was a degenerate. I was always taught that God is good and God is wonderful. These things, and God loves me. So when I actually saw, if you will, these things that were intentionally done to, that were cultivated within my psyche, subliminally and unconsciously, I started to try to find a way to explain them away. Like, oh, this is the reason why, my unconscious mind taught me to hate my race as a child. My mom always straightened my hair and be like, oh, your hair is your beauty. And so straightening it would let me know subliminally that my hair wasn't beautiful. I had to have Caucasian hair, or when I was younger and I would get darker in the summer, and how my family members would say, your skin's getting dark. Or when, the way that black men particularly were portrayed in my family, dad being alcoholic and, just violent oftentimes, and how my uncles, because I have a lot of uncles, and how they cheated on their wives, beat their wives, or stole money from them. I was shown certain, films like The Color Purple that portrayed black men to be, just very, not good partners, when it comes to molestation and rape, and when it comes to just being really acting very poorly towards their women, And then on the flip side of that, to find spiritual teachers or whatever who were black men, and one spiritual teacher in particular who is my savior, I feel, in lots of ways, for a black man to be the one that was used by and chosen by my higher self to reveal and give me revelation that allowed me to access knowledge in the etheric realm or the upper chakras or what have you. Okay, so getting beyond the atomic, to me is sick. It's sick and it's disgusting. Why would the higher self teach me to hate someone but then love someone? It's like, to me, that's disgusting. That's disgusting and filthy. And then blame and then judge. You know what I mean? Because there were times when I was actually learning things from, my spiritual teacher who was a black man. It was very difficult to watch because my unconscious was being bridged. And so, in my unconscious, I really hate black men. But as a conscious ego, I really love black men. So this, what we would call cognitive dissonance, or two competing cognitions, or what you would call in Christian theology crucifixion, was purposely actually cultivated within my mind to whip me psychologically. Why would you do something so disgusting? And who has the audacity to sit and take the wrath of the Lamb and to actually sit in my face and actually explain this shit to me? Nobody. I have not met one yet who has the audacity to. I have not met a devil yet who has the audacity. Every time I bring these questions and these concerns to a devil, they flee from me. So it really goes to show that I'm really a victim. I never used to believe, I used to always believe, oh my gosh, you're never a victim. There's always, you are, I guess what you would say, your life. I believe in all the new age bullshit that they pump you full of. You're in control of your life and your thoughts, and it's all up to you. It's your decision. It's not. I've definitely been betrayed. In the astral, not in this realm, because people in this realm are just a watery reflection of what comes from the metaphysical. So really, to be honest with you, honestly, in this realm, I'm not a victim. Everyone's being played, but I'm definitely a victim in the astral. I definitely want justice in the astral. And the thing is that, you can't really access the astral unless you actually die, or you get into a slower brainwave frequency of meditation. And so that kind of goes into as well, like how the people in the astral are very scary and do not want to sit in my presence and want to escape judgment from this ego. Because, certain things like meditation, like my higher self would always say, I want you to meditate. Meditation is key here for you to access higher dimensions and so forth. And so it's key to balance, if you will, the atomic and the metaphysics. But when I started to experience a lot of things like synchronicities, and I started to experience gang stalking programming, especially, it was impossible to meditate. So here again, the higher self, God, the filthy, disgusting degenerate that actually governs my ego, here was feeding me information to say meditate, but then preventing it from happening with gang stalking and harassment and electromagnetic torture, really. Because, when the more your pineal gland is calcified, the more it's connected to energy and electricity. Everyone's electricity. That's why people are shocked back to life with a defibrillator, because people are electricity. That's energy. Anything that has an electromagnetic field is energy. And so whenever that pineal gland opens, you become like a magnet to people and to things. And so when you have that connection and you can't actually separate yourself from others, it's impossible to meditate. It's impossible. So why the hell is my higher self saying meditate, but then providing these scenarios where I can't meditate? This is crucifixion. This is cognitive dissonance. This is two competing cognitions. This is square and circle scenarios. Very disgusting and filthy degenerate. if you will. You could really say in lots of ways that I'm the son of a bitch. Definitely. The son of a bitch, a disgusting, degenerate hypocrite, actually. A hypocrite that does not have the audacity to actually reveal itself to me. Because it knows that it's wrong and it's betrayed me. And I am a victim in this situation. And so I don't care what anyone says. It's from the heart. So you could say all day, well, you're not a victim. That's great. I respect your opinion about that. And let's keep it moving. So, I really wanted just to talk a little bit about the stellium in the 8th house and how, in receiving all of these bad breaks and things like that, it's revealed that, regardless of what, there's nothing that I can do karmically to prevent these things from happening and occurring in my life. They're very deliberate, just like I talked about in another video, how I went to a Piggly Wiggly and I was told to leave the Piggly Wiggly early, like 2 minutes before closing. There's no reason to have someone leave a couple of minutes before you close your store. Unless it's an emergency, like someone got hurt in the store, or I don't know, maybe something happened to one of your family members, like, listen, I gotta leave, lady, you need to leave, but if you don't give me a legitimate excuse and you're just telling me to leave, and not only that, but you're calling me a whore, a piece of garbage that deserves to die, a bitch, what else was that called? I don't know, there's just a whole lot that went into that gang stalking situation. And so the thing about it is that, when this happened to me, the incident that happened at the Piggly Wiggly, there were 2 incidences. So I was called all that stuff on one incident, but then I went back months later because I was told the person that actually did those things would get fired, although the manager never followed up with me. And so I was like, I was on that side of town or whatever, and I said to myself, okay, it's convenient. That person's probably not there. Everyone deserves a second chance. So I went back to the establishment and got like the same treatment, basically. I wasn't called all those things, but was very much harassed and followed around and treated like a piece of garbage, basically. So, I said to myself, what's the likelihood of that? You know what I mean? And so I decided to pursue it. So I called a whole lot of, attorneys. I actually sent emails to attorneys. I sent probably to 15, 20 attorneys. I sent emails to all the major news stations. I contacted the NAACP. Tried to contact the corporate office for Piggly Wiggly, although there's, independently operated and owned, but I did speak to someone who actually still has a corporate office for Piggly Wiggly in another part of the country, and that person, just acted really funny and strange. Like when I spoke to the person, she was like, she said that she would get in touch with the manager for me, and so I didn't really want anything over the phone because people lie over the phone. And I've gotten so many people who have lied to me over the phone, so I asked her to take down my email address so the manager could contact me that way, because the first incident, the manager said that he would contact me through email and never did. And so since, I was trying to debate whether I should handle it in terms of at the legal level, I asked her to take my email address down. And so she was like, okay, I'll take your email address down and give it to the manager. And then I said, okay, I was like, can you give me his email address, actually? And she was like, no. And I'm like, well, why can't you give me his email address? If you're taking my email so he can contact me through email, then, it should be no problem because he's going to contact me through email. But it should be no issues for you to give me his email address, I would think. So, little things like that 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 are just downright wrong and that are intentionally placed in your path to really screw you over and to produce this, I guess you would call, surge of energy that brings you to judgment, because, the whole purpose is to make you look bad, you see? It's to make you look bad. It's like, oh, look at how that people, they equate gang stalking as like poking an animal in a cage. You keep poking that animal actually bites you, and then you're like, oh, look at that animal, he bit me. I'm sorry, look at what you've been doing. And so gang stalking is really, designed to look very covert instead of overt. But with this Piggly Wiggly and the grocery store incident, they were such overt examples of being bullied and stalked that I felt that I had to take it to the next level and to deal with it in the fact that no one has reached out to me, and I've reached out to over probably 30, 25, well, probably like almost 30, because I've reached out to different news stations. I contacted the BBC, I contacted CNN, I contacted 4 or 5 local stations, the NAACP, whoever, in addition to all these attorneys and so forth. And so in doing all of this, you would think one person would say, oh, okay, let's actually look at your situation and what have you to see what can come of this. If you will, what we can do to rectify the situation. So it doesn't make logical sense. It doesn't make logical sense that I've had no one to actually help me to fight this thing. And so this works on you emotionally. So when you look at certain occult books, if you will, it tells you that it takes souls a lot of lifetimes to actually work out their emotional body. Because what does that do to you emotionally? If you can't go into a grocery store without being called a bitch and a whore and a slut, basically, and you're being told to do stuff like, leave the grocery store early for no apparent reason, that actually works on you emotionally. And when you actually try to reach out to people who so-called deal with the situation, who deal with litigating civil suits and things like that, and no one will help you, that makes the emotional I guess you would say aspect even worse. And so really looking at the stellium in my natal chart, it's designed to do this. This is not happening, if you will, by coincidence. It's not coincidental. This is purposely being done to torture me, according to my pineal gland, and how the records I'm able to access through pineal. It's being done to piss me off. And so, to piss me off to the point of judgment. So I'm the one that looks bad, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at how disgusting you look. And it's like, well, you called me a bitch, you've orchestrated scenarios where you said I'm a piece of garbage that deserves to die. You've actually harassed me now twice at the same establishment. And then, although I've contacted over 30 people or so to help me with this, and I've had no one to help me, that could cause someone to blow up. It could. Someone who's human. But the thing is that the whole purpose is to, the people who deal with this whole, I guess that you would say, construct, they're not human. They're not human, meaning that they don't have a hue, So when you don't have a hue, you don't have emotional connection, and so you don't really care about the emotions. All you care about is the physical. So the people who are, dealing with this whole scenario when it comes to me and my soul, they're like, we're not doing anything to you as long as we're not physically hurting you. That's how they feel. They're really disgusting. They need mirrors instead of gavels. But I have this stellium, this surge of multiple planets within a particular house, because of how many times I've been reincarnated, and how your hue gets lighter and lighter every incarnation until you become a master race, really. Blonde hair, blue eye. Being blonde hair and blue eye is not natural. Even most white folks are not born blonde hair. Well, even if they're born blonde hair and blue eye, their hair and their skin and their eye color gets darker. Get hazel or green or something like that. But this is not natural. Humans have a hue. The darker your hue, the closer you are to being human. The more you get reincarnated and more psychological you become. That's why, I hate to say it, and I'm not trying to sound racist or anything like this here, but when you get Western imperialism, you see a lot of reaping, not sowing of the land. And so the more, Westerners got involved with conquering territories and stuff like that, the more the land was raped, as opposed to, you don't really see a whole lot of that going on when you get to your more indigenous tribes and so forth, like in Africa and so forth. So, doing my research about eugenics and race and so forth, when you look at doctrines like Hitler's Mein Kampf, although he valued a master race of blonde hair and blue eyed, they're just a race of slaves. When you don't have any hue and you're blonde, super blue eyed, you don't have a pineal gland capacity. This is all what they consider to be calcified. And so you are ruled by your reptilian brain, which you can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. You are an animal. You're an animal. You don't have a soul. You're soulless when you don't have a hue, when you don't have a darker hue. And so this is a master race. This is a race of just reaping. Satanic race. A race of Saturn. Not Saturn, of Satan, not Saturn. So the darker the hue, the more Saturn. The lighter the hue, the more Satan. The more that this is not functioning. And that you're all about reaping what you can get. What you can get. And so even when you see that with cultures, people of color are sowers and more sowers, where when you get to your lighter cultures, you really just see, using other cultures, what other cultures have sown, and kind of taking what they've done and just using it for, just using it. You know what I mean? There's nothing new under the sun. It's pretty much things that have just been taken and, somehow perfected. You know what I mean? But really, in its organic state, it's been taken. You're just trying to redo something that's already been done, but you're not the creator. And so the creator is, the closer to the creator, the closer you are to melanin, to a melanated being. And so this is something my unconscious definitely, does not want me to have wind of. Does not want me to have wind of, and, does not want me to understand. Does not want me to understand. You can even look at eugenics when it comes to even certain movies, like when you look at, what is it? The Assassin's Creed. When they're trying to find the Apple of Eve. The Apple of Eve is they're referring to the pineal gland, not the pituitary. That's the animal aspect of you, but the pineal. So, the Apple of Eve was not taken by the black man, the black assassin, it wasn't taken by the Asian assassin or the other assassin that was like had some type of olive hue. It was taken by Cal Lynch, and they actually give you a whole lot of, I guess what you would say, like, significance, symbolic significance, if you will. But the fact that his last name was Lynch signifies that Eve is a black woman, and so he is there to lynch her, to take the apple of Eve, or to take the pineal gland capacity, because black women are very feminine, very spiritual. We're spirituals. Not only do we have the pineal gland capacity, which is feminine, but we also have the melanin. Okay, well, not just melanin or the pineal capacity, but we're also predisposed because we're female. So that's feminine on top of feminine. Whereas a white male is masculine on top of masculine. He doesn't have the pineal capacity because he is, deficient of melanin, and he's a male. And so on the astral realm, you see white men and black women together all the time. Whereas within this reality, you never see them together because there is a taboo associated with it that really, I guess you would say, attracts us on the astral to each other. It's kind of like, I want to be with this black woman, or this black woman's like, I want to be with this white man, but I can't do it here because that's, I guess what you would say, very much in lots of senses forbidden, but they just attract on the astral realm, and they purposely do that and cultivate a desire for the other in this realm so it can materialize and manifest on the astral realm. So, experience a whole lot of bad breaks. Like, for example, with gang stalking and being targeted within your community. The whole purpose is to, leave you destitute, not able to function properly within society and so forth. And so to institutionalize you in some type of way. Since recently, my parents are actually processing eviction on me. I thought this was very funny. So, I was told and invited here to, stay with my parents. I didn't have to come back here. I didn't make a conscious decision because, when I did come back here, my mother started telling me things like, that she didn't believe that I was sexually abused. And she started saying things to me like, don't make me regret having you, and all of this stuff. And so, I'm laughing because I said to myself, this is crazy. To me, it's unbelievable. I can't even believe this shit, because in coming back here, why would you say, first of all, if you told me this shit before I came back, I would never have come back here. But the fact that you're saying this stuff to me now, and you've got me into such a vulnerable position to where you feel that you have me by the balls, so you could, I guess that you would say, force me into, I guess you would say, inhumane conditions. It's disgusting. My parents are very disgusting at this point. And, you can look at some of my other gang stalking videos to really show how disgusting and degenerate they are. It's just... the thing is, when your pineal gland opens, you go back to your childhood. It's kind of like Benjamin Button, you know what I mean? So, in a way, it's like, although, how do I put this? Although I didn't have to come back here, my higher self decided for me to come back here to the beginning of how my life started. And so, when I started really, because when you're a child, you're taught that your parents are God. You're taught that your parents are God, and you're like, you respect them. You have a certain respect for your parents. But when I start to see the dynamics of my parents, I start to realize that they're really disgusting. Like when my mom and my dad were arguing, and they were like, oh, well, you're going to tell her, yeah, but you didn't tell her that you gave me gonorrhea at 9 months pregnant. Who gives their wife gonorrhea at 9 months pregnant? Well, who would give their wife gonorrhea anyway, right? You don't have enough respect at the atomic level, although gonorrhea doesn't truly exist when you get to the metaphysics, but at the atomic level, fine, whatever. But who gives their pregnant wife gonorrhea at 9 months pregnant? This is an example of my 8th house, and telling you in terms of where I came from, how my situation came to. Like I said, I have family members, and one of my family members suggested I was actually being molested and sexually abused as a baby. So I can only remember by 4. So this is why I'm so sexually disgusting within my unconscious mind. And so basically, to deal with what happened to me as a child, I blocked it out. It's dormant. I can't even remember it. It's such a, I guess you would say, a poor time in my life that I was not able to, I guess that you would say, deal with it on a conscious level. So because I was not able to deal with it on a conscious level, I forgot it. Let's just say that I forgot it. And so the higher self, or the unconscious aspect of me, brought me back to this residence to remember it. And even, and the thing that was so disgusting about my unconscious is that, because my dad has been, he's been retired for years. My dad is, I think 76 or something like that. And so he's been retired since, his, I think, mid-50s. So, it's been like over 25 years or so that he's been retired. But when I came back to live with my parents, he had his work uniform actually sitting out in the den for me to see. So me actually seeing his work uniform actually is a trigger to what I don't remember in terms of, something that, happened or whatever in my childhood and so forth. So there's no reason. There's no reason if you've retired for 25 years to actually have a work uniform that I would remember and that would trigger some type of memory from when I was a child. You see what I'm saying? When you went to work every day. Because my dad was a big part of my programming and hating black men, hating my race, and just witnessing what you would call alcoholism and domestic violence and that type of thing. So it was purposely put there to piss me off. You know what I mean? Purposely put there to make me feel like crap. And so this is actually orchestrated by the higher self, by God. This is disgusting. My higher self is a degenerate. So I wanted to, really point that out. And just point out the coffins of the Zodiac. That's pretty much my video. Point out coffins of the Zodiac. Point out how, when we're born into a coffin, to an avatar. And that's why it resonates a lot with us. That's why we often identify with our horoscope. And how, karma gets actually transcended when you are accessing knowledge in the higher realms, in the etheric realms, and you start to see that anything at the atomic level cannot be changed unless it's changed in the metaphysics. If you can't get to the metaphysics in a slower brainwave frequency through meditation, such as me, I haven't been able to do that, especially with all the gang stalking and synchronicities and just electromagnetic harassment. There's nothing that you can do. This is hell. That's why they say hello. They make us say hello. I just want to point out that that this is someone really said it very well. I remember there's a spiritual teacher I used to follow, and he said changing something at the atomic level is like going to see a movie and seeing that there's a fire in the movie, but you try to put out the fire by throwing water at the screen. And so you can't really put out the fire by throwing water at the screen. It's already been set. You have to actually go within. You have to go within. You have to see what is projecting this movie. You have to go to the projector. And who created the projector? So I will take it even a step further. It's not the screen. It's not the projector. Who created the projector? Why is it, ask yourself, why is it projecting this? How did the projector come to show a fire on the screen? You see what I'm saying? And so, I really wanted to just kind of make that known. Make that known, that nothing at the atomic level is, can really be fixed unless it's at the metaphysics. And if you can't get to the metaphysics, then you're at the mercy of God. You're at the mercy of God. And God is, for me, my God is a degenerate, hypocritical, lying, fearful, I guess you would say, it's not even worthy of my respect. When I look at my unconscious that governs my conscious ego, I say to myself, this aspect of me is truly beneath me. And so, the unconscious is always handled by what you would call masters or ascended masters on the astral realm. And so I consider, the ascended master, which is King James of Scotland, and the unconscious aspect of me that's owned by this ascended master, they're degenerates. King James of Scotland is considered to be royalty, but I hope that, if I get the pleasure of meeting him, that he doesn't actually expect me to curtsy, because, he is beneath me. King James of Scotland is beneath me. And this trick whore that he actually claims on the astral is beneath me as well. So they're both what you would say beneath me. you know? And so you can't really sit in my presence knowing what you've done to me and how you've betrayed me and how you, you know, you really sitting in front of a being like me is like, you can't have a gavel, you know, because they're judgers. And so monarch programming is all about judging. So when you actually have the truth show up, you have to hold a mirror to yourself as opposed to a gavel. And so looking at someone like me is fearful to a monarch like King James of Scotland, and this unconscious aspect of me that actually is tied to King James of Scotland that loves him. You know, and so being nailed to the cross of that is going to be very difficult, because, you know, being nailed to the cross of your unconscious mind, especially for me, is very difficult because, you know, in this, I guess you would say form, right, as an ego, I think King James of Scotland is the scum of the earth. But, you know, when I go to sleep at night and I shed my concepts of the Matrix, you know, he's like the best thing since sliced bread, you know. And I'm like, how do I actually love and hate someone? You know, looking at the logic and the rationality concerning King James of Scotland, everything that he's done to actually, you know, put me into debt and divorce and sexual abuse and, you know, to imbalance me and to create crucifixion and cognitive dissonance and competing cognitions within my psyche. I say to myself, how do I have respect for someone like that? You know, there is none. There is none. You are disgusting. And you really are beneath me. So you can call yourself royalty and act hoity-toity and act like your shit doesn't stink. But you are filthy, and you'll always be filthy in my eyes. So, you know, that's pretty much going to conclude, guys, my video for Coffins of the Zodiac, and talking about my natal chart and how, you know, it's important to really look at your natal chart to see, you know, basically what this coffin, which is the atomic level aspect of you, your zodiac coffin, what it has actually planned out for you, and how, you know, when you start to get toward the end of your incarnation, you will see that there's nothing that you can do karmically to change what it already has set for you to do. Like I said, there's no reason why I've contacted all these attorneys and news stations and so forth and not have one person say, I will help you. You know, it's intended to create an emotional roller coaster within me to bring me to judgment, and no being of light judges. So thanks guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video.